serious, what was the closest you've ever been to killing someone? When I was like 14 or so, I was on a swing at a park. I was going about as high and fast as that swing could possibly go. A kid who couldn't be older than 2 wandered directly in front of me as I was coming down. I slammed my feet on the ground and stopped myself about an inch away from her. My hand started to bleed from the chain, but at least I didn't drop kick a 2-year-old all the way across the park. The mother saw the thing happen, but she was too far away from us to do anything in the moment, but she ran over crying and thanking me for stopping. Had an abusive stepfather when I was a kid. A bit pedo creepy, would do things like accidentally let his robe gap open with no underwear on, would start tickle fights as an excuse to get gropey, that sort of thing. That was nothing next to the beatings, gaslighting, manipulation and other varieties of psychological and physical torture. I hated him more than I've ever hated anyone in my life, and one night I decided to try to make rat poison tea. Turns out the rat poison we had wouldn't dissolve in the tea. It's for the best. He's still an asshole, but at least I'm not a murderer. I had a girl that bullied me daily in the 9th grade. She told me to kill myself almost every day, and that I was worthless. She threatened to beat me up, and even threatened that she would kill me. I went to the counselor, and she said it was nothing, and I should just ignore it. No one wanted to help me. There was one day she cornered me on the stairs. They were multiple stories, and I was on my way to class. She was standing next to the railing, yelling at me, telling me how worthless I was, and I should just jump off the roof to save everyone the annoyance of knowing me. For a split second I considered pushing her over the railing. We were on the 3rd floor, so I don't know if she would have died or just been severely injured. Regardless, I considered it for 1.5 seconds before I snapped back into reality and just took off down the stairs. Drunk student fell into the road in front of me. I swerved and wrote off 2 cars and injured my passenger. He didn't even hang around to thank me, little wanker. I had started a grease fire in a pot on the stove while cooking for a date. Panic set in as it was kind of big fire. Only thing I could think of was baking soda would be the only thing to put it out, because that's what they taught us in school, right? Ransacked my cupboards, couldn't find it. Next best thing that came to mind, dirt from outside. Ran outside to get some dirt. Told her not to pour water on it, that I'll be right back. As I'm out there I hear her scream and a flash of orange. My heart sank, and I froze for a second. Did I just kill my date? Back inside, she's fine. Fire is smaller but still going. My walls and ceiling are scorched. I ask her what happened. She replied, she poured milk on the fire, because milk is thicker than water. When I was 15, I carried my 2-year-old cousin down a flight of stairs when I tripped, and we fell down 3 steps. She fell on the back of her head, and I on top of her. It took a split second before she started crying, and I thought she was dead. Thankfully, she was fine, but I'm so glad she didn't fell harder or over the handrail, or else she would have fallen at least 3 meters and would probably be dead. Someone. This unattended kid ran into the street as I turned into it. Didn't even see him at all because of how tiny he was. Just heard something hit my side view mirror, and that's when I saw him rubbing his head. Stepdad spit in my mom's face after not having abused her in over 5 years, so I shoved him. He said he was gonna come back and kill us and ran out the door, so I followed, picked him up from behind, carried him off the porch, and slammed him headfirst onto the cement, and then just beat the shit out of him while neighbors came out, got arrested, and got my first felony. Nurse here. Unit was very busy, and I mentioned to a patient we needed to start her on antibiotics. Patient consented. I hung penicillin, only to find out our computer said she's anaphylactic allergic to penicillin. Incredibly, she must have outgrown her childhood allergy. Beat myself up for a long time for that near miss. Won't make that mistake again. When I found out my grandfather raped my little sister, I was ready to murder him. I have bipolar and PTSD, which caused a lot of serious rage since it was unmanaged at the time, and I think the only thing stopping me was not knowing where he lived at the time, since I've never been close to my family. Never felt that kind of rage before or since. The old fucker seems to have poorly managed diabetes, so I'm settling with being happy he's suffering for the last years of his life. And honestly glad I never made that confrontation, because I was only like 20 at the time and I would still be in prison. Grabbed a screwdriver in a desperate attempt to dislodge my ex-husband from pinning/strangling me. Swung up and only put a hole in his shirt. Really wish I hadn't missed. I've decided if some way somehow I ever find out the man who molested my 4-year-old sister and gave her insty, which her finding out about it later in life was a large part of her suicide, that he will die. The chances are slim next to none that it will ever be discovered who that person is, and he could already be dead for all we know. But if I ever found out, I'd send his fucking head to his family for what he did. Does accidentally count? Because I leaned against an unsteady bit of wall my mum had told me not to. It fell and covered my little brother, 3ish at the time. Surprisingly he was mostly okay, a few broken bones and cuts/concussion, but it very much could have killed him. A motorcycle was hit by a public utility vehicle and went flying into the side of my car. If I came a split second later, I would have ran the guy over. My older brother. It was after my mother had passed away. I was working 3 jobs so that my older brother and 2 younger brothers could carry on studying and make something of themselves. 4 years and I find out instead of him paying the bills with the money I was giving him, it was not enough. He was taking out debt on my name. Turned out after 4 years of working 3 jobs non-stop, I was in about 100k debt with no money left in my bank account. The only reason he did not die that day was too many people got in the way. I didn't want to hurt anyone other than that trash of a shit. My mum was dying in hospice. It wasn't dignified, and she was in a lot of pain, but she was still lucid. I asked her if she wanted me to help her speed things up. For context, she was a nurse before she got sick, and I knew what I could do to make things happen. She told me she wished I could, but didn't want me to get in trouble or go to jail. We laughed about it a little bit. I maintained I would have a ball in jail. Right after suffering a miscarriage, my sil told me that I don't know what being a family is like, since it was just me and my husband, and that kids make a family. I had to be dragged away by my husband. I was ready to go to prison over that bitch. When I was 13 years old, I was living in a group home. The boys in the group home were never allowed to go upstairs where the girls' dorms were. I was the only girl who left each day for public school. Everyone else went to school in the basement. Every day, as I would be the only one upstairs getting ready, this one guy snuck up the stairs and forced himself upon me. I told one of the house parents and she laughed at me. After a month of this, I snapped. I stood on top of my bed listening as his footsteps got closer. As soon as he walked into my room, I lunged at him. I wrapped my hands around his throat. As soon as he hit the ground, everyone in the group home came running to see what that sound was. It took several people to pry my hands off that guy's throat. I was arrested and originally charged with attempted murder. Luckily that kid confessed to raping me repeatedly. I was still charged with assault and battery though. Was in my room one day and heard my sister screaming at her BF. Came out and he had laid hands on her. Went to the kitchen, grabbed the chef's knife, turned to him, and told him to leave or die. He left. In the aftermath, and in the midst of discovering that my ex-husband was having an affair with someone I considered my best friend. Spoiler, she wasn't a friend at all. She had me babysit her kids while they were screwing. Extra spoiler, she wasn't the first. God, I was dumb. We were in his truck and having a vicious alcohol-fueled argument. He was about to get violent with me, trying to grab me, and was going to hit me. Not the first time. I pulled out my .22 handgun, semi-auto, from my coat pocket and held it to his head. I seriously considered just ending him. His attitude changed from aggressive to whoa whoa whoa. Decided he wasn't worth it. I had better things to do with my life and people, family, children, who depended on me. He backed off. So I shot the gun into the ground out of my window, got out of the truck, and told him to never come back. Dumped his crap in the yard, and changed the locks. Myself. Today. Not gonna do it. Spaghetti for dinner. I love spaghetti.